Hello, I'm Becky McCray from Oklahoma.
And I'm Deb Brown from Iowa.
Today, you're going to find out about trends that we see reshaping rural places today and that will have a lasting impact on which small communities will thrive. First, Deb is going to give you some background on who we are.
We both live in small towns. We're entrepreneurs and volunteers in our own communities. We've been trained in traditional economic, workforce, and organization development. I'm a former Chamber of Commerce executive director with my certification from the Institute for Organization Management. My business background, it's varied with experience in foreign casualty insurance, retail management, bartending, and I grew up farming. Becky has her BS in Business Administration with honors from Northwest Oklahoma State University, and she earned a Quality Leader certificate from the Workforce Oklahoma Training Institute. She is an unrelenting entrepreneur, a cattle rancher, and previously was a retail store owner, city administrator for a small town, and a nonprofit executive. We joined forces in May of 2015 to help small towns and rural communities thrive in ways beyond the traditional strategies. Becky developed our idea-friendly method, and we continue to strengthen and share it using our own personal experiences in business, agriculture, entrepreneurship, education, media, nonprofits, and government. We are not a couple of women sitting in a fancy office somewhere in a large city, publishing white papers and telling you what to do. We're both in small towns and out in the field, talking to business owners, residents, officials, volunteers, and everyday people. Since 2015, we've conducted the survey of rural challenges, learning from over 1,400 rural people what challenges you face. We believe in rural as the place to be, and we hear what you tell us. I say all of this because it's important that you realize we know rural, and we are always learning from you and sharing your stories.
The start of 2022 is an interesting time to be talking about trends. A lot of plans and predictions written leading all the way up to 2020 are now trash. If you want your future plans to have staying power, write this at the top. You don't have to know all the answers, as long as you stay open to new ideas. I don't know all the answers either. That's why I am sharing these new ideas with you. Today, we'll talk about 6 significant trends we think will last a long time in rural places. There are 3 that we will cover with some depth, and 3 more that we'll give you our quick take on. Here's that first major trend. Warm up the welcome wagon. New residents are coming. Almost as soon as the pandemic started, we heard about people moving from big cities to smaller towns and rural areas. That continued throughout 2020 and 2021. Rural people across the US and Canada have said that they're seeing more new residents from urban places. Despite those headlines, the real trend isn't a single explosive exodus from major cities straight to the tiniest of towns, but the more subtle diffusion of opportunities to a broader swath of places. That is the trend that will last. What's driving this? Study after study demonstrated that more people in the US would prefer to live in a rural community or small town than were already living in rural places. Many people wanted to move if they just had a choice. Well, now they have more choices. After years of anticipating a big shift to remote work was about to happen, here it is. More jobs, including high-paying jobs, have become remote work friendly. And with the pandemic, more people are questioning why they stay in terrible jobs or terrible places for them. The pandemic also affected what people want in a house, more room inside and out. That is another advantage for smaller towns and rural places where homes typically offer more space than the most expensive city residences. An emerging factor in this migration is pressure from changes in the climate. This happens right now. After disasters like fires, floods, or storms happen, more people are moving rather than return to the same house that they lived in before. Some of these disasters are happening in places historically deemed safe. Nearly half of Americans who plan to move in the next year say natural disasters and extreme temperatures factored into their decision to relocate. Now you can go to real estate websites like Realtor.com and Redfin, put in any address, and get detailed ratings of potential disaster risks. Other maps, like those published by Popular Science, show how flooding, extreme heat, drought, wildfires, or economic impacts on a broader scale might make many big cities look riskier to live in. Companies are looking at these same risk factors when deciding where to locate or relocate, so this affects economic development also.
A positive factor pushing more people to consider living in small towns is the increase in rural tourism. Now, we've reported on positive trends in rural tourism since 2014. Now, with the pandemic, more people are visiting small towns and rural places, especially on driving vacations. New research from Pinterest found that today's road trippers are searching less by specific destinations and more by what activities they like. And once they get here, they see that rural places are nice places to live. They're more likely to consider places they've enjoyed visiting when they think of where to move. One urban couple that has already relocated moved from Philadelphia to my small town, Webster City, Iowa, simply because they enjoyed an arts-themed Airbnb experience here. Considering that over half of rural counties in the U.S. have lost population, most small towns have infrastructure in place to welcome new residents. The streets, water lines, power, and much more, they're already here. We have downtowns that are walkable, neighborhoods built for people, not cars, and the social infrastructure of government, nonprofits, and activities. All of this makes rural communities attractive places to live. What might prevent us from taking advantage of this? We lack enough good housing. It's the number one challenge on our survey, and it's the most common challenge we hear in conversations with rural people. Internet service is another limiting factor. Up to 2/3 of potential real estate buyers rate it as the deciding factor. Only 72% of rural Americans report they have broadband internet. That's 5 to 7 percentage points less than urban and suburban residents. Another limit on any population gain is that rural people are also migrating. We're moving from our smaller towns to larger small towns. That means the smallest of towns, those nanopolitans under 10,000, and especially picopolitans under 1,000, will continue to have the hardest time maintaining population. So what actions can you take to benefit from this trend? Well, you can watch our SaveYour.Town videos on housing and Zoom towns to get specific recommendations of what actions to take on resident recruitment and the remote work migration. You'll find more information about that right below this video that you're watching now. Another great resource is the Resident Recruitment Series from Ben Winchester and others in Minnesota. You'll also find that link below.
Time now for our second trend. Leave it better than you found it. We are giving nature a helping hand. We're seeing a shift from simple awareness or protection of the environment to deliberately trying to help the ecosystems around us regenerate naturally. Rural people have a tradition of stewardship. We have long been aware of depending on our environment and caring for the land and animals. Setting aside the charged political rhetoric, a solid majority of rural people in the U.S. are concerned about our climate and support natural climate actions focusing on our plants, trees, soil, and water. Over the past decade, we've seen an increase in the number of smaller farms and more intentionally responsible stewardship of the land and animals. More farmers are using cover crops, doing less tilling, and restoring more natural grasslands and wildlife habitat. More ranchers are prioritizing animal well-being and natural ecosystems. Consumers increasingly ask for local, natural, and organic foods. Tribal governments and native nations are prioritizing environmental stewardship of their traditional lands. Indigenous people are nurturing grasslands and forests, replanting food areas for foraging, and protecting traditional fisheries. The Yurok tribe of California recently used income from sequestering carbon in their forests to buy back more of their traditional lands and launch regeneration projects. Another factor driving increased environmental interest is a shift in the natural resources that are most in demand. New sustainable natural resources are rising, and they show great promise for rural places, starting with the dirt under our feet. Local dirt, clay, and fiber are being used as modern building materials. This cuts out the need to transport the heaviest building materials, and it works with large 3D printers to create entire buildings. At the 2021 World Congress of Architects, Anna Herringer estimated that a modern building made from local clay takes less than 2% of the energy required for one made of concrete or bricks that had to be shipped to the site. Wood might drive the next sustainable resource boom. There's a resurgence in building with timber, including tall multi-story buildings. Lignin, another tree-derived resource usually burned as waste, is being called the most versatile resource you've never heard of. It's a potential source of useful and more environmentally friendly polymers that could cut down on the need for petroleum-based plastics. Another natural resource perfect for rural places is mushrooms. They're being increasingly used for food ingredients in things like coffee and hamburgers. And they're also a source of mycomaterials like leather. Ecovative design in the nanopolitan town of Green Island, New York, uses mushrooms to grow eco-friendly packaging, natural foods, and skincare products.
Other commodities that come mostly from rural places are being reimagined. Waste coal is a new possible source for those rare earth minerals used in high-tech chip manufacturing. Another pilot project is skipping the heavy mining equipment altogether. They're growing specially chosen plants and using their ability to draw useful minerals from the soil right up through the roots. Rural energy production is also diversifying with more renewable sources. Utility scale wind farm developments are noticeable on land and offshore, but utility scale solar generation is also coming on strong. Solar farms are using solar panels to generate electricity, then planting crops and grazing animals in the shade below them. Turns out this is also a great arrangement that helps the bees. An Australian firm just announced they'll be expanding their green hydrogen production in the U.S. with a new facility in the micropolitan town of Ardmore, Oklahoma. That hydrogen is slated for use as cleaner fuel for heavy transportation vehicles. Long electric delivery lines and aging power grids really are vulnerable to disruptions that made the headlines in the U.S. last winter. More rural towns all over the world are installing microgrids that generate and distribute power locally. They may not realize it, but they are following the lead of island communities like Avacos in the Bahamas and Ocracoke Island in North Carolina Outer Banks. It just goes to show you that rural areas and islands really are testing grounds for the future. The biggest barrier to regenerating our environment is mostly our own mindset. However, rural people all across the political spectrum see ourselves as stewards of nature. This is one of the most powerful motivations that we can tap into. What actions can you take? Well, your best tool to give nature a hand is your wallet. Be thoughtful and buy from local farms, gardens, craftspeople, and others. Support those innovative local regeneration projects by buying in when you can. The next most powerful tool is your voice. Help spread the word about projects supporting nature in your region. Bringing them more attention will help them to be more successful. Now, for examples of local action you can take related to food, watch our food business ecosystem video.
Let's go to our third big trend. Be good neighbors. People are eager to belong. we see a strong trend towards building unified communities and deliberately depolarizing from national politics. People are eager for unity. We have seen this in our own work. Our 2021 video on building a unified community was our most popular of the year. Others have found this in their research also. One nationwide study, 93% of Americans said they want out of the current political polarization. In the past, rural places may have felt relatively insulated from divisiveness because most people seemed to share a common heritage or beliefs. Now, rural places are increasingly diverse. U.S. Census numbers showed that most rural counties increased in diversity in the past 10 years. Our own survey of rural challenges found that twice as many people said their community was diverse or was increasingly diverse compared to those who said their community was not diverse. We expect this to continue and accelerate as more people move into rural places, like in our first trend. Small communities have a secret superpower they can tap into to bring people together. Studies show that nature's power to cause feelings of awe and wonder might help reduce polarization and connect people. That means rural